Welcome to the Jackson Rudolph Podcast. I'm your host, Jackson Rudolph, and this is episode 127. And we've got a friend of the show making his return. This has got to be the maybe fourth or fifth time he's been on the show, but he always drops so much knowledge that we got to keep him coming back. We've got none other than Bailey, Be Real, Murphy, all kinds of great stuff to talk about today. Obviously went up, dominated Quebec, got some big wins at Ocean States. Par for the course for him in this NASCA season. Just went and did the WACO qualifiers, and they've got a great squad that qualified for WACO over last weekend. But before we get to any of the karate stuff, Bailey, most important thing is you just graduated from college, right? So congratulations to you, and tell us a little bit about that and kind of what's your degree in and what do you want to do with it?
All right, so I appreciate it. Thank you. I haven't graduated yet. I graduate tomorrow morning. My degree is in criminal justice. I'm super excited about that. So over this semester, I actually was interning with pretrial services at New Britain Court in Connecticut. So, I had the opportunity to work with some bail commissioners, learn about that job and, other things that go on in the court system. So that was real cool. As far as me, like I was just telling you, cry is my passion. I feel a lot more comfortable trying to pursue that passion, knowing now that, I will have my degree. I've done some work, interned a little bit, have some things on my resume. So, God forbid, but the karate stuff ever went south, I feel a little more comfortable knowing like I do have a backup plan.
That's awesome. And that's a perspective that I think is so important for a lot of the young athletes that are watching the show to recognize is it's not even necessarily like plan A and plan B. Like everybody knows or everybody should know that you're not going to make your living off of sport karate, right? Unless you wind up opening a successful martial arts business and having a school, sure, you can do it that way. But as a lot of people who have been there, done that know, owning a martial arts school is very, very different from being a successful martial arts competitor. Those things are quite mutually exclusive, right? You can be both, but it's hard to be both, right? And so the thing that I want young competitors to take away from that is that if you're passionate about sport karate, absolutely do all the sport karate you want, but always be cultivating, just like Bailey just gave you the example of, be cultivating whatever that primary career is going to be so that you're always enabled to do the sport karate as well. And if that primary career is owning a martial arts school, that's awesome, but it can also be something else. Going to school, getting your degree, doing criminal justice, going to med school, whatever the case may be, right? Like those things will allow you to be involved in sport karate longer. What I've seen a lot in my time is people will just be only sport karate until they're 25, 26, and then they'll realize that life has to happen. And then they have to kind of completely step away from sport karate to get the rest of life figured out. And it kind of messes up that whole trajectory, right? So I love the way that you've done it, man. And now next part, wanted to give that lesson to the young ones watching.
Yeah, that's what they needed. They need it.
Exactly. For the rest of the show, I'm going to try to shut up a little bit more, and I just want to hear some of your perspectives. We got a great list of questions set up for you and just a lot of opportunities to drop some knowledge bombs. But first, I want you to just reflect on Quebec Open a little bit. Take us through some of your big wins, won the open weight, won the overall, won the last man standing. Just take us through some of the highlights for you. But then also talk about some of the competition, because I heard some murmurs that there were some pretty good local competitors there as well, in addition to, top national, international talent.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. Quebec was an awesome event. I was glad to be back. I'm happy the tournament is back. The last time I went to Quebec was in 2018. And that was actually the only time I've ever lost my my point fighting division in the adult division. Like that was the first time I ever lost my division. So coming back 5 years later, 5 years later, I wanted to obviously not just win my division, but I'm a different person than I was in 2018. So I expected to go there. I made an expectation of mine, to be as dominant as possible. We had a great weekend for straight up. I was able to win the NASCA open weight. I fell short in the WACO open weight to Dev, but I'll get that one back for sure. He knows, me and Dev know what it is. And then we were able to go to the finals for team. That was a good fight. I think that might be on the top of my list, even though me and Kev had a great fight in VFT last man standing. Um, I don't think there's a better feeling than being down in a team fight and then your team uh, not hoping you win, but expecting you to win. It's not a better feeling for me or position to be in. So that was a great position to be down three and win by one. So I would say the team fight for sure was probably the highlight for me.
That's awesome. And it doesn't surprise me, right? Because that's one thing that I love about the squad that you guys have with Straight Up is you see that kind of togetherness. I mean, I talk about this with regard to JPM all the time and about how the squad that we've got right now, I'm so proud of the camaraderie and how we're really all one unit. But Straight Up's got that same thing going. And I think that that's something that makes you guys so great, especially on the fighting side. And then, like you said, we're going to get to that coming back from that 3-point deficit, being able to take that win. But you mentioned the win against Kevin in the last man standing. And I want to talk about that first. Because Kevin in particular really impressed me in that fight. You know what I mean? Like the heavyweights this year, it's kind of been a little bit of a carousel of who's been winning. Obviously, Avery had the injury that knocked him out of Ocean States. Alex Mancias has a couple of wins. Then Kev gets it at Quebec, right? And it's good to see some of these. I mean, Kev's been around forever, right? But kind of coming back to winning the heavyweight. Remember, years ago, he was kind of flexed between the lightweight side and the side. Anyway, without getting into all that, he had a really good weekend, makes it to the last man standing against you, and y'all were tied going into the last round. So speak a little bit to kind of the renaissance of his career, one of the most active competitors on the circuit, but now winning some overall grands and starting to really kind of chain some wins together.
Yeah, 100%. Well, it's weird for me because when Kev was killing it, I was a young dude and I was watching it, and it's weird being on the same team with him now because it's someone that I looked up to a lot, someone that I aspired to be like. I saw Kev every weekend going to a different tournament or teaching a seminar, and like I realized at a young age, like, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to do when I'm at that level. I'm at that point. I want to be able to travel, go to all these tournaments, and now I have the opportunity to do it. But fighting Kev, it's always a great fight. He came out in the first round real hot. He came out fast, right? And I think I was down one at the end of the second round. Or at the end of the first round, I was down one. Then we had a real good round in the second round. I ended up getting up by 3, and then within the last couple seconds, he shut that down, and it was tied up again. And then the last and final round, great back and forth fight, and then I was just able to pull away at the very end. But other than that, like I told Kev as we were walking off stage, I think that was the best fight we ever had. The first time I ever fought Kev was in 2017 when I was 15. So it's like the progression of our fights has come a long way within itself. So really cool as well to see.
That's awesome. And that's one thing I love about Kev is that he's got that for a lot of fighters. Like he's been around so long.
Yeah, definitely.
He's been so active. Like that's one thing that like every time I bring him up on the show, I can't help but tip my cap to. I mean, this dude is not only making it to all the big NASCAs and consistently contending for grands there overall at Quebec, but he's winning every regional tournament that you look at. Like every regional tournament seems like he wins the fighting grand, right?
Yeah, he's crazy.
For sure. So definitely shout out to Kevin Walker for always holding it down. No matter where he's going to be there. Absolutely. So now let's talk about that team fight, right? And for this one, I just want to talk, forget the X's and O's and the stuff that Bailey's always going to talk about, right?
Yeah.
I want to talk about mentality, right? Okay. Because like you mentioned, there's something different about when it's a team fight and when your team's down and everybody looks at you as the anchor to be the guy that can lead them to the promised land, right? So I guess this is more of a Kobe Mamba mentality question, right? But take me in, like, what are the things that you're thinking as you're walking into that last round trying to overcome that deficit?
That's a great question. I'm trying to be as patient as I possibly can. I don't want to force an issue. We're already down, right? So, I can't go in there be as fast or as aggressive as I would like to be. So, I have to be patient. I have to really set things up. I have to use the clock. And a lot of people in that situation would think, well, the clock is against you. 100% is against me, but 2 minutes is a long time. I fought a lot of point fighting matches. I mean, I'm 21 now. Been fighting since I was 5. So I've been in a lot of situations in the States, out of the country. So I think my experience as a younger guy has allowed me to kind of understand what part of the clock I should be getting certain points at. Because I didn't want to go out there and try to score a whole bunch of points, gas myself, and then we lose because, John had a game plan of understanding that he knows that I can score a lot of points, just scores at the end, right? So my whole game plan was to kind of score, and then my last couple of points be as the buzzer's going out, which I think I did a pretty good job of. I ended up tying the matchup. I was waiting just to get that last point. John actually scored, and that forced me to have to score another one to 1-1. So.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. And one thing that I love that you bring up there is the fact that to some extent it's scripted, right? Like you've got an idea of exactly how you want that round to go. And to your point, I think that a lot of people in that situation, you're down, you're focused on recovering the deficit as quickly as possible. And so sometimes we will see that anchor, depending on, of course, their skill level. For the top team, sometimes we'll see that anchor just exploding off the line right away, trying to get that deficit gone as quickly as possible. But the other thing that I see, you mentioned the gassing out. Sometimes, though, if you've got another great fighter across from you, they know you're coming, and they're going to lean on that D side. And next thing you know, the 3-point deficit is a 7-point deficit because they knew you were coming, right?
Yes,
so
sir.
I love the fact that you talk about that patience. How does that change when you're just in a solo match, right? Especially as you're going through multiple rounds, like a BFT with 3 rounds. I mean, a deficit's a deficit, right?
Yeah.
But when you're going into a fight and it's 0-0, do you have that same kind of mentality of kind of having an idea of the script and how you want to lay it out? And does it change based on the fighter? Are there some fighters that you want a quicker start, some fighters you want to take your time?
Yeah, no, that's a great question too. So I feel like every fight is kind of a script, the VFT fight, it's a 3-round fight. I have no reason to, go out there and be super, super aggressive and try to score 10 points in 1 round, which I'm capable of. A lot of fighters are very capable of scoring at a high level in just 2 minutes, right? But if that would happen, I would have ended up losing by like 5 or 6 just because in that last round, I wouldn't have been able to move my legs or I wasn't able to take off or anything like that, right? So it really is just about in those 3-round fights being able to maintain and pace yourself through all 3 rounds so you can be successful and have those bursts within the 3rd round. And then a solo fight, or not solo fight, like a single round fight, 2-minute fight. Those are the fights when I allow myself to push. I think I'm very good at scoring. That I think I'm a very offensive fighter, a very aggressive fighter. So I'm able to score very fast and very, very quickly. So in those single round fights, I'm looking for a spread, honestly. That's what I'm looking for. I'm trying to get them out there as quick as possible.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I like that because, you talk about expending energy to get the spread, but if you can get the spread in 30 seconds, that's a heck of a lot better than bouncing around for 2 minutes, right?
100%. Yes, sir.
Gotcha. So the other thing I want to talk about with regard to Quebec, getting off of the fights and all of the exciting stuff that happened within it, let's just talk about the show. And actually, I got a feel for how packed that crowd was off of one of your Instagram stories.
Yeah.
Just tell us about that atmosphere. I mean, as far as point fighting matches go, that might have been largest crowd you've ever fought in front of, right?
100%. Yeah. So the first time I ever fought Quebec was when I was younger. It was 2016. So I saw it then. And I was just like, wow. And not being able to go for a couple of years, and it's now 2023. I saw it this year, and I was like, wow, it's crazy that I have the opportunity. I'm blessed enough to be able to fight, and this many people doing the niche sport that we do. So it's a great opportunity, great experience. I recommend everybody, win at Quebec Open so you can be on that stage. That's where you need to be.
For sure. And truly, I can attest to that as well. There's nothing like it. Like, especially when for a Forms and Weapons guy, like when you get to play your music and walk down that catwalk, man, and then out onto that stage. I mean, there is nothing like it. And talking about my Forms and Weapons experience, this is a question I was wondering about because I was thinking about you having won the open weight, won the overall, and that's kind of par for the course for you, right? Is you show up to a tournament, odds are Bailey Murphy's going to win the open weight and the overall, right?
Yes,
so for me, like between the traditional and the CMX grand, again, as a forms and weapons guy, right? Obviously, the goal is, well, yeah, I want to win both of them, right? Like the goal is to make that happen as often as possible.
100%.
But deep down, like as a competitor, if you made me pick one, like if I had to shift my focus to one or the other, it feels a lot better, at least to me. This isn't me speaking for every forms of weapons competitor, but it feels better for me winning the CMX than it does winning the traditional, right? And I guess in my mind, it's the extra risk associated with the CMX. Like not only do I have to do the best form, but I got to hit my own form while I'm trying to do the best form, right? And so for me, like CMX, I always held that in higher regard personally than the traditional side of the grands, and I was trying to win both of them. So for you as a fighter, does it ever feel that way between like your overall grand and your open weight? Of course you want to win them both, but is there one you care about more? And if so, why?
That's a great question. I would have to say the open weight, obviously, not everybody even really does it, but the people that, that do compete in it, those are normally the better guys. They're the better guys, the better fighters. I have the opportunity to fight heavyweight fighters, people that I wouldn't see in my regular division. So I just think it means more knowing that like people from every weight class, every category, they'll be in those divisions. But, I feel like right now, the sport is very, very lightweight dominant. So I feel like, some of the best fighters in the world are lightweight fighters. So even then it's going to be tough regardless. So, I mean, honestly, it depends on who I fight in those, it goes tournament by tournament. Like if I have easier fights in open weight, then I would say the lightweight, means a little more because of who I had to fight, Because it really depends on every tournament. It changes.
And actually, I like that perspective because now that I think about it, you talk about like, well, who's the matchup? Because that's really what matters more. Yeah. And that's something I preach on the show all the time. That's why you got to respect your competitors, right? Because without you're only as great as your competitors can allow you to be.
Exactly.
Right?
100%.
If you never beat anybody great, you can't be great yourself, right?
Exactly. Yes,
and I remember like there was a diamonds one year that I broke my bow, so CMX didn't matter. But it also like wasn't against my like the big rivals of my career, the Reed and Cole Presley, and Tyler Weaver, and like it wasn't against those guys. And that's no disrespect to the guys that I was against, but it wasn't my like age old rivals. But traditional weapons for that grand that was on stage, it was against Shaheen, who, everybody knows was like the traditional weapons guy for a long time, right? And so truthfully, in that moment, because of the matchups, I'd say maybe traditional did probably mean a little bit more to me that night. So I like that perspective of like,
that makes sense, 100%.
Exactly. It's about who those matchups are and who you got to get through to get to that level, right?
Exactly.
And it's interesting what you said about kind of the sport being lightweight dominant. And I think that it's all about the depth, right? Like the lightweights, that division is so deep with talent. Whereas on the heavyweight half, you've got your handful of guys at the top that have a significant amount of separation from everybody else, right?
Yeah.
But then in the lightweights, you've got your guys at the top like yourself, obviously.
Yeah.
But the list just keeps going on
down.
and on.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's deep in the lightweight division, I think. And I think it's cool to see and obviously be a part of because growing up watching the sport, it was more of a heavyweight dominant game, So it's just cool to see how it's transitioned. And I feel like a lot of the lightweights, like they fight hard too. Like a lot of the lightweights, they take off like they're like 50 pounds heavier anyway. Like they're strong. So.
Right, for sure. And I like what you mentioned about like our generation growing up. We watched Ray and Jotty and Ross and Dana.
Exactly.
It was heavyweights that were kind of ruling the world. Of course, there were great lightweights too. But I mean, some of those names I just mentioned, those are all-time names. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway.
Yes,
so next thing I want to talk about, we're talking about heavyweights. Let's talk about a new heavyweight that just joined the straight up roster, made some headlines because obviously it's a big deal when somebody that got signed by the Pittsburgh Steelers now is going to be fighting point karate, right?
Right.
And of course, he was fighting as a junior. I learned recently he was on Team Full Circle. That's where Mr. G first kind of noticed him. And we're, of course, talking about Jarvis Miller. So I want to get your perspective because I called Mr. G about this, and he was telling me that Jarvis has been working with you a lot, right?
Yeah.
So just kind of obviously don't give away any secrets that Mr. G be mad at you about. But, just kind of shout some praise at Jarvis and tell us about him a little bit.
No, 100%. So, Jarvis is a CT native like myself. So growing up, he was on Full Circle, and their team, they had a stacked team. It was Jalen Carr, Jarvis Miller, and Chris Gargiulo. Mm-hmm. So myself and guys you guys probably never heard of, like Devin Meckler, Jerome Bailey, who were my teammates at the time. We used to see these guys all the time, and we were on our school team, but we were all good. We're on a school team, but we're good. So I remember at New England Open 2012, we gave him a good fight. We ended up losing that team fight by 1. But I'd seen Jarvis all the time. I was seeing him at local tournaments. We were cool. When I moved to when I went to college, I go to school in Springfield, Massachusetts. The school that was closest to me is actually his school. Obviously, at that time, he wasn't doing much martial arts. He was at Penn State, transferred to UMass Amherst for a post-grad year. And then he ended up getting that call up. He got signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers. After that, he came back and he was telling me, he was like, yeah, bro, I'm ready to get back to work. And ever since then, we've been working, He competed at King of New York in September. He did well there. He lost, and the person he lost to was me. So, he won his division, and we lost in runoff. He lost in runoffs to me, and me and him, we work out 3-4 times a week. And he loves this sport just like anybody else. If I text him and I'm like, bro, you trying to train? I'll either say, nah, I can't right now, or be like, I'm already here, bro. Like, that's just the type of person that he is. So.
I love that. I'm excited to see him in action. Going to be making a straight up
debut. I'm excited myself.
That's awesome. And the other thing that I know Mr. G's happy about is now you guys, you got 2 men's teams that'll be in Atlanta, right?
Yeah. Yep. We got 2 men's teams.
That's exciting. I love that.
Super exciting.
That's awesome. So we talked about the acquisition of Jarvis. You guys made another big pickup. I guess would have been like late last year going into this year. We saw him suit up for the first time this year in Diego Gomez in the junior division. And we've been talking about the depth in the adult division, right? Let's talk about the depth in the juniors too, particularly the 14 to 17 boys. Obviously, I got 2 teammates in there. We got some killers in the 14 to 17 boys fighting right now. So obviously highlight Diego a bit because that's your boy. But just after you talk about Diego, the depth in that whole division.
100%. So, Diego, he's a killer. The first time I saw Diego or worked with Diego was 2021 at Joe Perry's tournament. After the tournament, me, Diego, and Vito, we got some good rounds in, and the kid, he's legit. He's tall, has a good leg, great hands. He's everything you could ask for in a fighter, honestly. He's young still. He's just trying to figure out the game himself. But other than that, especially being on straight up now, he's in great hands. So we'll take care of him. And then the juniors. So let's see, Battle Atlanta 2021. That first NASCA tournament back. I'll be honest, I was disappointed in what I saw from the juniors. But 2 years later, I think that the sport is starting to evolve again. I feel like the juniors are 10 times better than what I saw at Battle that year. I'm super, super excited. It's let's see, Alex, my bad. Damian Rodriguez, he has a good amount of 14, 15 guys right now. 14, 15, and 16, 17, and they're all killers. Sebastian, he's good. Cheeks, he's good. Yeah, there's a lot of good kids right now. Jakai from Team ATL. There's a lot of people. Trey from Ben School. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of people that people probably don't even know. So.
Right, and of course I'm gonna shout out Jake Muick too. But hey,
I had a conversation with Jake at Quebec, and we were talking, point fighting and stuff. So yeah, no, he's a great kid. He's in great hands, being with Trevor. Yeah, no, he's gonna be great.
Hey, when you get a chance, you gotta talk some sport karate history with Jake Mueck, because that kid, the dude is an encyclopedia. It's crazy. I mean, it doesn't surprise me as a student of Casey and Trevor, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, the dude is an encyclopedia like you and me. It's crazy. His sport
That's dope.
history stuff.
That's dope.
But hey, I also got to give a shout out. Let's talk about some of the names we just mentioned. Diego on Straight Up, Sebastian on Paul Mitchell, Cheeks on Competitive Edge, right?
Yep.
They're all coming from the same place. Let's talk about Vito, man. Like Vito knows how to train him, right?
100%. Yeah, Vito knows how to train him. So that's actually how I started my year. I stayed a week at Vito's house. So had me get up, train like crazy. I think that's the first time since I was like a kid where, I cried during a workout. I still finished, but like I'm a grown man now, crying as I'm finishing a workout. So yeah, I feel for them. They definitely go through some tough work. They definitely go through some tough workouts. It's just a cool opportunity to see how they get things done over there, how their classes work. It's great to be able to spar with all of them. So yeah, that's a great camp over at Vito School in Laredo, Texas.
For sure. And iron sharpens iron, man. Like that's what it's all 100%. About. When you get that level of talent all in the same place, they're only going to keep getting better and better. Yeah. And this is kind of the perfect segue. We bring up Vito. We've been talking about some coaches. Let's get into coaching, right? Because that's one thing that I noticed from you. Like you're one of those fighters who is always in the coach's chair for your teammates. And it doesn't surprise me because of the fight IQ that everybody can see that you have, right?
Yes,
but talk about, and I talked about this on the show when Richard Plowden was on the show, we talked about this quite a bit. But from your perspective, what are some of the most important things that somebody can do in that coach's chair in a fight? We all know about the development stuff in the dojo, but when it comes time to sit in the chair, because there's a wide variety of styles, right? You could be a little bit more quiet, subdued, like yourself, like Richard Plowden. You could be a little bit more vocal, like Mr. G, like Coach Damon, right? So talk about, from your perspective, what is the most important thing the person in that chair can do for the fighter that's out there?
I feel like the most important thing is you have to be a different coach for each person that you're coaching for. Certain things I say to Kev, I'm not going to say to Brandon or Ben, right? Certain things I say to Jason, I'm not going to say to Brandon, vice versa, right? So I think it's just about knowing your fighter, knowing your teammates, understanding how they react to certain things that you say, certain things they need to hear. Like Mr. G, he doesn't have a super technical coaching style, but, he's going to fight for a point. He's going to give me some stuff. He's going to make sure that those judges are paying attention now, right? Or like Coach Kev or somebody, instead of me saying a specific thing, like, I'm just giving them a reminder. So it's not even about specific things to do. It's just pay attention to that, man. Like, things like that. Okay.
I love that. And that's one thing that Richard Plowden talked about too, was like, particularly when he's coaching like Morgan and Avery, he's like, I can't be animated, right? Because if I start to do that, then all of a sudden that impacts their calmness, right? And that's something that if anybody watches Morgan and Avery fight, how important that like Jack Felton, Iceman, like totally unbothered that element of their fighting style is too, right? So I think that's a really, really good perspective. While we're talking about coaching, obviously there's been a lot of strategy in this show. Now I want to talk about kind of a topic of debate that's been out there. And it seems like everybody's got a little bit of a different opinion about this. Yeah. Some people say make the ring bigger. Some people say change the rules. Some people like it as it is. Some people hate it as it is. And we're talking about the out of bounds rule, right? Yeah. So I don't want to give you like a specific prompt for this one because the opinions that I've heard are so variable in terms of different people's ideas for solutions or the need for change. So in Bailey's opinion, right, what do you think that needs to happen with the rule, the ring size, just your take on the out of bounds rule in general?
Okay, for sure. So if we're fighting in the 6x6 ring, if we're gonna do out of bounds rule, so for me, I liked when it was 1 foot out. I liked being able to have 1 foot out of bounds. If we're gonna do 1 foot out of bounds, I personally don't think that it should be a point to the other side. However, if we're in a 7x7 ring, and some tournaments, switch it up, like at Quebec, they had a WACO division, so the adults were primarily fighting in that 7x7 ring. At Diamonds, I feel like they normally do 7x7 sometimes too. So if it's in a 7x7 ring, that's too much. That's a lot of space. So if one foot goes out, at that point, I do believe it should be a point to the other side. But the biggest thing is just, if we're gonna have rules, we just gotta stick to it. If it is a 6x6 and the rules are saying 1 foot out of bounds is a point to the other side, then I think it should just be a point to the other side. I don't think it should I don't think it should even be an issue. However, things like fighting out, that's where things become tricky. So if I'm near the edge of the line and I throw a defensive back fist and I make zero contact, and I land out of bounds, that's I think that should be a point to the other side too, because I didn't even touch you, you're out of bounds. If I throw a defensive back fist and I make contact with your glove or your shoulder, I can figure out that's fighting out. It's not like I threw a technique without hitting you. Even if I didn't score, I'm still like able to connect. Right. Yeah. So little things like that, and sometimes that can be tricky. But I saw Ty lose at not this isn't why he lost, but I saw a bad call with Ty where he threw a defensive back fist and he actually scored, but he landed out of bounds. So the other fighter was given a point, which I don't think is right. I think that's fighting out because he scored clean. Right. He scored clean.
I can understand like maybe not being a scoring technique because you land out of bounds, kind of the same as like landing falling down. But to give the point the other way for that's a 2-point swing.
2-point swing, right? Yeah. So it's like things like that. It's like it doesn't make sense. The other fighter literally got hit. I just happened to land out of bounds. He shouldn't get a point for that. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's same thing was like a defensive side kick. Right? If I throw my D side and I'm going backwards, I land out of bounds. I still hit you. If you say it's no point because I'm out of bounds, that's fine. But you don't deserve a point for getting hit with my defensive side kick.
Right, for sure. And I'm seeing some comments coming in talking about making rings 7x7 and all that goes away. I think a lot of times, and the thing that I struggle with about this whole conversation with the out of bounds rule, and I like your perspective on, hey, if we're going to have a 6x6, just keep it consistent. Yeah. Let's change or forget about the fighting out terminology and let 1 foot be out, right? Yeah. I personally have hesitations about the safety issues of having 1 foot out, especially at a tournament like Competes, where it's just concrete. It's not even carpet. It's just concrete if you've got 1 foot out, right? So there's exceptions like that I worry about. But the thing that I feel like, yes, in a perfect world, heck, give us all 8x8 rings, right? In a perfect world, like let it be a 7x7 with an extra border or whatever, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The problem is, and the thing that everybody seems to forget when this debate is happening, is mats are expensive. Right? Like people underestimate the additional cost through promoters of trying to, like, if you do that math, that's a bunch of extra rings. And even if you say, well, just for the adults, well, that's at least three. And I don't even think that 3 rings is fair for the adults because that's saying like a lightweight ring, a heavyweight ring, and a women's ring. The 30 plus deserve the same thing. Those are most of the time bigger guys than the guys in the 18 to 29, right? So, I do agree that in a perfect world, make the ring bigger and you solve all the problems. But at some point, and people might be mad that I say this, but at some point we got to cut the promoters a little slack, right? Yeah. At some point we got to be like, okay, promoters, we understand that it's your money that's on the line here. We understand the extra cost associated with purchasing all these extra mats. And by the way, the spacing, right? These promoters have to be able to fit a certain number of rings in a ballroom in most cases. And if you make the rings an extra, dimension or 2 bigger, you're not going to be able to fit as many rings. And if you have just 1 or 2 less rings, your efficiency goes way down, right? Very true. That's the thing everybody cares about most is the tournament running smoothly, right? Well, safety first and then tournament running smoothly, right? But anyway, so and another good point, like all of the Quebec rings were 7x7. Venue can accommodate that. WACO ring 7x7. Venue can accommodate that. So maybe that's another part of the question is how can we look at the NASCA tournaments and making the venues more accommodating to the size? But again, forget the price of extra mats. What about the price of a different venue? Right? That's
exactly
potentially like greater expense. But anyway, I will get off my soapbox about that. Thank you for sharing your perspective because I was genuinely curious about that. And I want to shift to another conversation that you and I had recently about some other leagues that you were watching. And I'm going to keep it general. You can get as specific as you want to. But some other leagues that you were watching, and not NASCA, not your big like major open sport karate leagues, but just some other organizations you were watching, and noticed that there were things that you could offer them, right? Things that you noticed about their game and about their style that you're like, hey, if I had some influence on this, I could really help some of these athletes, right? And so I want to give you the floor to talk a little bit about that and open up that opportunity for anybody listening. Like, that's one of the great things about sport karate is these guys are accessible. If you want to book Bailey Murphy for a seminar, send him an Instagram DM, and for the right price, he'll come and do a seminar, right? Just tell us a little bit about that interaction we had, because I think that was a really astute observation that you made. And then advertise yourself a little.
For sure. So, actually started with me and Ty. We were, Ty's getting super big with on TikTok and Instagram with posting like his clips from fights. I've been posting a couple clips as well, and Ty actually messaged me and he was like, "Yeah, bro, there's this kid. He wants to work with me and stuff. He's from an ATA school." And I remember, I don't know why, but I remember that you had worked with some ATA schools yourself. So I reached out to you, and I gave the idea like that a lot of these kids in ATA like, they have, it's not like they're just bad. Like, they have good techniques. They're good martial artists. They're just not doing the right things. Like, I'm watching the videos. I'm like, if you just knew what to do, you would have scored. Or if you took that angle, you would see things a lot clearer, right? So yeah, that's something that me and Ty discussed, and I feel like if we were able to bring our instruction to them, we could continue to make the sport bigger, not just on the NASCAR level, but in general. Because the way that I think about it, like, if I'm in Europe, point fighting is point fighting, right? But here in the U.S., like, there's so many different leagues within, our own country, so many different organizations, closed off tournaments and stuff like that, where, honestly, if me and Ty taught 2 seminars at a ATA tournament or ATA school, we could make such a big impact. I feel, So
absolutely. And I love that perspective. And by the way, I'm one man, so I'm honored that Bailey reached out to me because he knows I've got some martial arts business contacts. And I reached out to a few ATA schools that I'm like really close to and have known for years and years and years, and done 6 or 7 seminars with some of them and stuff like that. But this is the perfect platform. Like, hey, ATA or GTMA or whatever system that you're a part of that has a closed circuit, what Bailey said is absolutely right. At the end of the day, point fighting is point fighting, right? And if you can adopt some of these principles from 1 or 2, including Ty, of the best guys in the world that are doing this right now, doesn't matter what your set of rules is, they're going to be able to help you get to the next level. And to expand on that a little bit more, Bailey, I also want to talk about Point Fighting Professionals, which is a program that you and Ty, I believe, are working on together, right? So just give the audience some more details about that. And if there's any, I believe it's like a private training program, essentially, right? And so if there's any individual fighters that want to seek that mentorship, tell people about how they can get in touch with that.
100%. So, like you said, PFP, Point Fighting Professionals. It's myself, Ty, Troy Benz, and El Java. So basically, we're trying to help younger guys, any people of any age, really, deepen their IQ and understanding of point fighting. We're all martial artists. Everybody understands how to throw a kick and punch, but it's just going deeper into another layer, understanding when and why to throw those punches, how and when, just really understanding your techniques and doing it with a purpose, not because you were taught it. Anyone can do a blitz, but it doesn't mean you're going to score. Just because you go into a fight and you blitz doesn't mean you're going to score. You have to understand your spacing, your footwork, how close you need to be, right? So it's all little things like that we work on. We try to get them to really understand. So on Monday or Wednesdays, we have our free film study. We have a Discord account. You can go on Instagram and click the link. And yeah, we have an open chat. Anyone can say anything. We send fights. You can send your fights. We also do. We were doing it every weekend. We're doing a Sunday class. Kind of stopped. Now I'm out of school though. We could probably pick that back up. So.
Awesome. So lots of really, really good resources. I love the level of access to have like that Discord chat with like a bunch of sport karate minds, right? Talking about fights and sharing fights, especially led by the four of you that are at the top of that. So a really, really great training opportunity for any young point fighters, or like you said, point fighters of any age that just want to sharpen their skills. Absolutely go and check out Point Fighting Professionals. And then I know that this is turning into one continuous advertisement. However, I think it's important because this stuff is all really, really good training opportunities for anybody tuning in. So now I want to pivot to coming up at the Battle of Atlanta, right? Obviously, I'm hyped for some of my Competitive Edge alumni. Now Team Paul Mitchell members going to be running the Competitive Edge camp. Dawson Holt, Ben Jones, Esteban Tremblay, Avery Presley. My wife, Gabrielle, is going to be doing a traditional seminar as part of the Competitive Edge camp. So for my Forms and Weapons people, make sure you check that out at the Battle of Atlanta. But if you're putting on some gloves at the Battle of Atlanta, you got to check out the Be Real seminar. Bailey, tell us, what are you going to be breaking down in that session?
100%. So, like I said, a lot. Some of the things I just said, just understanding when and why to do certain techniques. We all can blitz, right? We just have to understand. We have to put ourselves in the correct position to be successful with our techniques, right? So, we're definitely going to be doing a lot of footwork. You know, that's me. That's what I love to do. I love to be able to move, set things up. So definitely be a lot of footwork. Yeah, a lot of footworks, a lot of setups, and just deepening that understanding of what you're doing with, everybody can't be Bailey. Everybody can't be Tyreek. It's about, finding the things within your own style that will make you successful.
I love that. And hey, for any of you tuning in that just heard footwork and setups and all that and just thought point fighting words and didn't think beyond it, okay? Footwork and setups is, in my opinion, the reason this man is who he is, right?
Yes.
Like the footwork and the setups is what sets Bailey apart. And from my observation of point fighting, like obviously he has great individual skills. He's got a great blitz. He's got great kicking ability. But when I watch these fights, the thing that makes this man different is the way that he's able to set up those techniques, the way that he sets traps and truly plays a chess match throughout a point fighting match. So when you hear Bailey say, I'm going to be teaching footwork and setups, don't just think, oh, yeah, he's teaching point fighting stuff. No. He's teaching the point fighting stuff that makes Bailey Murphy who he is, right?
Yes,
so I wanted to foot stomp that a little bit. And also, I want to show some love. I'll pull this comment up. Ty Saint in the chat saying W ad on all of this. So hey, now we're going to get off the advertisements, but we brought up Battle of Atlanta. So I want to talk about Battle of Atlanta just a little bit. I've got a controversial question because I was talking to my dad recently, who's one of the coordinators of the event, and he told me, and he said that he was willing to say it publicly, so I'm going to say it publicly for him. If I get in trouble with my dad, it's my dad. I don't care. I'm a grown man now. But anyway, so he was telling me that, like, internally, the Battle of Atlanta, like, they envision themselves. They want the Battle of Atlanta open weight to be the American equivalent of the Irish Open open weight. Like that, they want Battle of Atlanta to be the Irish Open of the United States, right? To have that level of prestige in terms of point fighting. And honestly, at one point in the Battle of Atlanta's history, you can argue they already had it back when they were fighting at the Georgia Dome. And, you see those fights between Nasty Anderson and Tony Young and all that, right? But talking about the Battle of Atlanta today, is it the best open weight in America already?
100%. I think, honestly, for me, I think Battle of Atlanta would be the best. Battle of Atlanta is the best fighting tournament in the U.S. What other tournament is doing, a Friday night, nighttime show just for fighting, right? So, they're always trying to do new things. They used to have the Extreme Warrior Challenge. Every time there is an open weight, there's definitely 50 plus. I think there is 50 last year, and I know, and
I think they're projecting at least 60 this year too, which is crazy.
I think in 2018, when Cam and I fought for the final, I think that year there was like 60, and in open weight. So yeah, I think every year it's getting bigger and bigger, and yeah, definitely one of my favorite tournaments.
That's awesome. And that's something that you guys tuning in right now, you've got to make sure that on Friday during the eliminations at Battle of Atlanta, I'm sure Point Fighter Live will be streaming. You guys got to make sure that you go and you watch some of those fights throughout the open weight, because the Final Four is going to be crazy when we get to it, right? And I believe, is it Final Four go to Friday night fights, and then the last two go to Saturday? Yeah. So those are probably going to be crazy fights. But with a field that deep, there's going to be a dozen crazy fights before we ever get to that point.
Sure.
You guys got to make sure that you're staying tuned into all of that, because it's truly going to be a crazy weekend of fighting. And it pains me that I'm having to fly in on Friday and miss those fights. But hey, I'll be there on Saturday. We'll be doing – I guess this is a good time to go ahead and announce it. We will be doing the Jackson Rudolph Podcast live from the Battle of Atlanta once again. We are working on the broadcast schedule right now. Tentatively planning on doing another morning show Saturday morning. So we'll definitely be having some of the fighters on that were on the Friday night fights, talking about kind of moving into Saturday and strategy adjustments, things of that nature. I have a really good feeling Bailey Murphy's going to be on at least one of those shows. So that is going to be back. Super excited about that feature. And you already know I'm going to be on the mic commentating when we get to the Battle Zone finals. And I'm super hyped for that.
I'll be there.
Love it. So, hey, at the end of this show on the Jackson Rudolph Podcast, all the fans of this show know we love to play some games. And actually, I love the fact, like, we burned through some of those questions. So we got some time to play some games tonight. The one that's been popular the last few episodes is just doing this like straight up TikTok style. You see it all the time. People like, all right, let's do a draft and see who gets like the best 5 point guards or whatever, right, for basketball. But for this discussion, obviously the past couple of episodes, I think we've done open forms, we've done sword, we've done bow. It's time to do a point fighting draft, right? So we're going to keep it simple. We're not going to separate lightweight, heavyweight. We're not going to do all that. We're just going to go men's point fighters, all-time inactive, so we're not hurting anybody's feelings who's fighting right now, all-time no longer active point fighters, okay? 1 through 5, we're just going to draft them, don't have to have a certain number of anything, and then you guys are going to tell us who's got the better 5-man point fighting squad. And as always, the guest gets the first overall pick, and we were joking before. I think we already know what this is, right?
Yeah, for sure. So I have to go with RD, GOAT, Raymond Daniels. So, yeah, that's my number 1 pick.
All right. I love it. So I knew that was coming off the board. And I actually wrestled with this. I was like, man, do I take somebody who I think is a good matchup for Ray? Do I take somebody that I'm just a huge fan of and I want to give the props of taking number 1? But I've decided to go with the guy that whenever I've heard somebody try to make arguments about, oh, no, Ray's not the GOAT, this guy's the GOAT, right? Whenever I've heard that, the one name that tends to come up most commonly is Nasty. So that's who I'm going to go ahead and take. I'm going to take Nasty Anderson, and he's going to be my first pick. So far, we got Ray, Nasty, and Bailey. We're on to your second pick.
Okay, let's see. I'm going to go Laszlo.
Ooh. Yeah. Okay, you gotta give us more than that. You just can't drop all the combos.
Growing up, that's another guy. I mean, I've had the opportunity to fight against him, but growing up, that was another guy. Like, he was really one of the first dudes over in Europe that I watched. So, like, everyone was talking about Zolt, and everyone was talking about Zolt, but I was always a Laszlo fan. Honestly, I like Laszlo a little bit more than Zolt. I mean, I'm a blitzer. And he has a quick blitz. He throws his body ridge. So, yeah, definitely Laszlo for my second pick.
I love that pick, and I'm a huge Laszlo fan. And as somebody that was on the sideline for, I was probably on the sideline for literally 80% of every fight that the Hungarians ever fought on American soil, right? Like, so I watched almost every single one of those fights. And the crazy thing is, like, as the fan, right, as the teammate who's on the sideline getting hyped, like Zolt, you knew was going to take care of business. And you also knew that the way that Zolt fights, like, he was going to try to stay in control of the match, right? Yeah. So you obviously Zolt had his highlights when he would, right, on somebody, right? So he had those. But Laszlo was the guy that when it was Laszlo's turn to fight, you knew you were going to get one of those. Oh, you knew you were going to get one every fight. whether he was ridge-handing somebody's ribs or hook kicking somebody's face, like you knew you were going to get one of those. And he had the attitude about it too when he would land that on somebody. So I was always a huge fan of watching Laszlo's fights. Okay. All right. So you've got Ray and Laszlo. And I'm going to go – I've got Nasty. For my second pick, I'm going to go – I was considering taking like the anti-Ray, right, trying to do the head-to-head matchup. So I'm going to go ahead and do it. This is a guy that I will die on the hill of saying that he's a top 5 point fighter of all time, and I'm taking Ross Levine.
That's a great pick. Let's see.
I don't have to explain that one much more, right? One of the best sides of all time, one of the best reverse punches of all time. Like, anyway.
100%. The person I'm going to go with next, he'll give anybody a fight, Jason Grenier.
Ooh, okay. I see Bailey's strategy now. Bailey was trying to go with all the people that I wasn't necessarily going to think of. And he was trying to build his roster that way. See, this man, his X's and O's are always there. Okay. All right. I got 2 heavyweights. I'm feeling like I need a lightweight. And honestly, like all the guys that I was juggling for my first pick were still on the board. I got my GOAT argument. I got my Ray matchup. And now I'm going to go with just one of my personal all-time favorites. Everybody watching this show knows I bleed black and white. Ray was black and white too, but right? I'm taking Pedro Xavier with my number 3 pick.
Okay. That's a good pick. That's who I was going to try to pick next. All right. So it's my 4th pick?
Sure. Yeah, your 4th pick.
Yeah. So for my 4th pick, I'm going to go Jotty.
Yeah.
Gotta go Jotty for my.
I knew he was coming off the board. Can't argue with that.
Gotcha.
So Jotty's off the board. Ooh, where do I want to go next? You know what my team needs? My team needs an enforcer, right? Every great point fighting team. I guess you could argue that's Nasty. So I kind of already have one. I already have one, right? But I want another one, right? Nasty's gonna fight my anchor. I want somebody else. Not afraid to hit hard. There's a lot of names I could go for, a lot of tough guys. But I'm going to be a homer on this one too. I'm going to give shout-outs to Brian Ruth. I'm going to give shout-outs to Trevor Nash. But I'm going to take Damon Gilbert at 4. Damon Gilbert's where I'm going for 4.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. That's a great pick. So I'm cheating.
Nice. You got your last pick, Bailey.
I'm cheating. I'm going Roman.
Ooh, okay.
Going Roman.
I watch that link.
Yeah.
All right. I love that. Now, hey, with my last pick, there are some names that it is criminal that we have not taken so far.
Yeah, no, right? For sure.
It is criminal that we have not said Jack Felton's name yet.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's active though. He's active.
I guess that's true. That's true. Jack is active, which disqualifies him. You're right. Yeah. You're right. Okay, so that gives me an excuse for not saying Jack then. That's okay. Because you've probably watched me before. I'm also, like I say Ross Levine's a top 5 all time. Yeah. I also will die on the hill of Jack Felton being a top 5 lightweight of all time, right? But anyway, my last pick, I had somebody on my mind, and then us talking about Jack made me forget it. What was it? Oh, if you're taking Roman, you've already got – I'm taking Zolt. Like that's come on. I mean, the Zoltan Roman had some really good fights. They had
that's matchup.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so I like the way this went. We went a little unorthodox with some of this. I stayed most part like pretty old school with a couple of more like 2000 guys. So to recap the rosters for everybody watching, so that you guys can argue about this in the comments. I'm not going to try to remember your 5, but I'll say my 5, then you say yours. But I got Nasty Anderson, then I got Ross Levine, I got Pedro Xavier, I got Damon Gilbert, and I got Zolt Murati. Shouldn't be surprising. There's a lot of black and white on that list.
Yes, sir. All right, so we got Raymond Daniels. Well, I got a second. I got Laszlo, Jason Grenier. What did I get for?
You went Jason Grenier. Your last pick was Roman.
Yeah, who's my 4th pick?
Who'd you take, bro?
Oh, I apologize.
Oh, Johnny. It was Johnny.
I apologize. 94th and Roman 5th. So.
That's right. Hey, if Johnny's watching this, he's cussing you out right now. I love it. Hey, that's something we got to do. Is I got to get Johnny on the show at some point and get him to talk about his philosophies. That's somebody. It's criminal. He hadn't been on the show yet, so we got to be able to. We got to make that happen. So Johnny, if you're watching, I got to get you on the show too, my man. Anyway, so hey, we haven't quite hit the 1 hour mark yet. And there's another game that we haven't played in a few episodes that a lot of people like. And I know, Bailey, you're not prepped for this, but it's a game you can play off the dome. That's kind of the whole point. And that is, we've been playing some 20 questions. We've been having a lot of fun with that on the show as well. So we'll go, let's see, we got like 5 minutes left. We'll go 2 rounds, right? I'll give you what, in my opinion, what would be an easier one, and I'll give you a little bit of a harder one. And then you know the game. You just ask me questions. You get up to 20 of them, and you're trying to figure out what fighter it is that I've got on my mind. And, of course, you know it's going to be a fighter as well.
Okay.
So let's see. For the easy round, relatively easy, I'm going to go. All right, I've got there's one question if you ask, it's going to give it away pretty quick. But I got one.
All right, you got a fighter?
I got a fighter.
All right. So I got to ask, like, what team?
Yes, well, it's got to be yes or no questions. That's the trick about questions.
Okay,
it's got to be yes or no answers, right? And by the way, hey, chat, if you think you can beat Bailey to figuring it out, drop those names in the comments and see if you can beat him.
Are they you said yes or no? Are they a puncher?
Yes.
Okay. Were they on Paul Mitchell?
Yes.
Is it Ray?
It's not Ray.
Okay.
Can we pause for a moment while he's thinking about his next question and say that he went puncher, Paul Mitchell, Ray?
Are they a heavyweight?
Yes.
Okay.
Heavyweight, half of the bracket. I don't know if that was their division. I don't quite remember.
So wait, say that again. Say it again.
Heavyweight, half of the bracket. They weren't necessarily the heavyweight division, although they might have been. I don't quite remember.
Okay. Are they active?
Not anymore.
No. Mike P?
It's a good guess, but no. Not a good guess because it's close. It's just a good guess because I like Mike P.
Yeah.
Sammy Smith saying J.O. Sammy, we're talking heavyweights. J.O. ain't no heavyweight. Come on.
Let's see. Half.
I'm going to remind you about that hint that if you asked one specific question, it'd get real easy real quick.
Bad at this game. Let's see. I asked if they're righty. Did I ask that already?
Now I gotta try to picture them fighting in my head. They were orthodox. They were a right hand reverse puncher. Yeah.
They are right hand, so they have their left leg in front?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know. I'm stumped.
All right, I'm gonna give you a hint. I'm gonna give you a hint to help you out, and this will probably help you figure out the easy question.
Okay.
This is a fighter that I was teammates with, so they were active during my career.
Okay, they're active during your career. You said heavier side.
Hey, audience tuning in, I'm so proud of how hard I'm making Bailey think right now. This is
Who was on Paul Mitchell recently? So
I'm surprised Ty hasn't thrown out a guess yet. If he's in the chat, I'm surprised he hasn't thrown something out.
2017, 2018 was it? It was Cam, Tomas, Richie, Laszlo. So who else?
Bro, you already said the name. You just got to pick it. It was Tomas, bro. Come on.
I don't know how I didn't.
I thought going more recent, and the easy question was like, oh, if he asks if it's a Hungarian, it's going to give it away. You know what I mean?
Dang, I just messed up, man. I should have guessed that.
All right. Hey, we'll give you a mulligan. We'll give you one redo. And hey, seriously, chat. Like, I want you guys getting involved. Like, I want to see if you guys can figure this out too. I said this one was going to be a hard one. I'm not going to go too obscure. I'm just going to go more old school.
Okay.
I'm not going to think of like a third place fighter and give you that. But all right, let me think. Who's a good one to make you guess? I thought of Kim Do, but that wouldn't be fair.
Yeah.
No. Who is a good fighter to make Bailey guess? Let's go with. Ooh. All right. I'm not going to go as old school as I thought I was going to go. So this is a last 20 years fighter. Not the whole last 20 years. They're not Jack. And the other hint that I'm going to give you before I start letting you ask questions is I'm going to say this is a U.S. Open overall Grands winner. Okay, so this is last 20 years, a U.S. Open overall Grands winner. Now I'm going to let you ask your question, see if you can get it.
Were they on All-Stars?
Oh, man, this is going to be quick. Yes.
Jamal Beanie.
Yo, that's crazy. This dude had one question. That's crazy. Yes, it's Jamal Albini. That's the answer. That was crazy right there.
You said one U.S. Open, so it was either going to be
in the last 20 years.
I don't know why. I don't know what made me. I
said name a U.S. Open overall Grands winner in the last 20 years, and Bailey's like Jamal.
Yeah, I knew we're talking about Jamal. I don't know why.
I love it.
That's a great win, though.
That's awesome. And that's the cool thing about the Open is that in the last 20 years, we've seen some really cool, like individual, almost out of I mean, they're all great fighters, but relatively speaking, almost like out of nowhere runs to go and take that U.S. Open overall. The Jamal win was a crazy year. The year Alex Lane beat Ross in the final when Alex was like in the process of riding off into the sunset, right? Like
2013, 2014.
It was somewhere in there, yeah. But we've had some crazy, particularly in the heavyweights, some like crazy U.S. Open finals.
Yeah, even with Jack and Ray, clash sparring with Laszlo and so yeah.
Hey, we don't talk about that. Going back and watching those highlights, that gives me nightmares, man. It's not good. But hey, I'm gonna defend my boy Zoltan Laszlo. They were not ready for the rule set. The rule set that was going on in that fighting match. That was basically kickboxing out there.
Caught off guard.
But anyway, hey, mad respect to Ray and Jack, though. They crushed it that night. They looked incredible, but not surprising coming from Ray and Jack. But anyway, so a little bit of fun at the end of the show for you guys. As always, we're always going to try to play some games at the end of the show, let the audience have some fun with it. But Bailey, thank you so much for taking the time, man. Again, so much knowledge dropped in this episode. And anybody, if you happen to be catching the tail end of this, we're all having the fun and games, make sure you rewind and you go and listen to some of the advice and the knowledge that I was given. So Bailey, can't thank you enough for taking the time. Definitely we'll see you soon in Atlanta, and we'll get you on the show once again there. But hey,
I really appreciate it. Yes, sir.
Absolutely, man. Any final closing thoughts, comments to send us off?
Like we said earlier, if you didn't catch the whole show, I'll say it now. You could always message me on Facebook or Instagram if you're looking for private lessons, either online at a tournament or if you're trying to get a seminar. And make sure you guys follow Point Fighting Professionals on Instagram as well.
Absolutely. You guys, hey, don't pass up on that opportunity. Make sure you get in this guy's DMs, get that training. Super important. This has been episode 127 of the Jackson Rudolph Podcast. I'm Jackson Rudolph, and I'll see you next time.
Real.